Alright YouTube, we have a handy dandy new microphone here which has better sound quality than the microphone built into the C260, which is admittedly good but doesn't work quite as well. So I'll be using this from now on. I'm going to play around with its, program and so forth to perfect the sound quality. It has a little bass it can stand on. So we're going to see how this works. This is sort of a first test video, and it'll be better for music as well. But there's bigger issues right now in the Middle East as before. First, however, my prediction appears to be coming true. That Obama's approval just sunk like a rock over the course of the last 24 hours to 42% approval, 53% disapproval. Now, any individual poll doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what company's releasing it, how accurate they are. You have to aggregate them together to really get a clear picture. I use Real Clear Politics because it aggregates about 10 different polling companies, and that's the way that it should be because all of them have margin of error, all of them have inherent bias. So I look at RCP. I wouldn't be surprised if this, on the new Iraq news, drops 2 or 3 more points, at least to the point that it was at right after the Obamacare disaster, the website rollout, when it was at the lowest point that it's been on this chart. And the reason why I say that is this. This is a story, link in the description, from WND. Iraqi Air Force evacuating besieged American contractors. No help from U.S. military as escape routes cut off. I am anti-war in a general sense. I opposed the Iraq War. I opposed the war in Afghanistan. I think they were terrible ideas. I think Bush fucked up. But Obama currently is the one in office. I don't care how many people try to blame it on Bush. Anything that happens over there right now is a failure of Obama's policies, and if they are related to a Bush-era policy, then he is the one responsible for doing away with it and replacing it with something that works, which is something that he simply has not done. And I'm getting front-lit here by the sun because the weather is currently changing. New York. A U.S. contractor in Iraq told WND, the Iraqi Air Force has begun evacuations from Balad Air Force Base where 200 American contractors were trapped by the al-Qaeda-inspired jihadists who have seized control of 2 cities and are now threatening Baghdad. I'm not going to read through this whole story. However, suffice to say, what apparently has happened is that the Iraqi Air Force got the green light to evacuate these people, which is great. They evacuated some of them, and then ISIS showed up on the front door and started hurling grenades and firing on this base. The contractors inside apparently are safe currently, but it's only a matter of time before they break down the gate, enter this base, capture it, along with any equipment or weapons that might be there, and probably kill all of the contractors. The problem seems to be now that they're there, they can't be evacuated because the Iraqi Air Force doesn't have the technology and training necessary to go into that sort of zone and evacuate these contractors. These are Air Force contractors. These are desk jockeys. These are people who push paper all day. They're clerks. There are probably a few actual guards there that know how to fight. The rest of them, they're lightly armed, if armed at all. They don't really have any combat experience. They're certainly not going to be able to stand up against a force that just overwhelmed Mosul and took all of the aircraft. They took all of the missiles. They took all of the small arms. They raided the banks and got $500 million. I believe, if I heard correctly, in gold. They are amassing thousands more troops because they're either forcing people into service and giving them weapons and say, go jihad these Americans and these Shiites, or they're getting volunteers joining their ranks who actually believe in this sort of nonsense. So Obama has just told the Air Force to stand down and not do anything, probably because he's worried that we'll send a few planes in there and they'll get shot down by anti-aircraft. So what are we supposed to do? We've got apparently at least 100 or 200 contractors in this base completely cut off from the Iraqi soldiers that would otherwise be protecting them, and it's not clear that they would be able to protect them either. You've got to remember, when the ISIS fighters arrived in these other cities, only a small proportion of the soldiers that we ourselves have trained even fought. Most of them dropped their guns, took off their uniforms, and went home. Others fled. Others fought briefly, chickened out, and went home. Nobody stood in their way. Thousands and thousands of troops left the battlefield when they possessed superior numbers. They had superior firepower. They could have easily fought off the ISIS fighters, and you know what it is? Most of the fighters in that part of Iraq don't even support the Iraqi government. They're there for their check and to smoke hash all day. I also saw people saying, oh, yeah, I was there. I saw these people smoking pot all day. They're there for the money. They don't care about anything else. Only in the southern parts of Iraq, where there are Shiites and Kurds and so forth that might have signed up, will you find that they'll actually actively resist ISIS. So Obama, rather than doing what he should do, which is some sort of intervention at least for these contractors, is doing nothing. And these people now will potentially be killed by ISIS, because he's not willing to send in, a couple of warthogs, which would decimate everyone around that base that's trying to surround it within 10 minutes, most likely. It could be done. We've got far superior technology. We've got far superior numbers. We've got a carrier group right off the shore in that region. We've got many more troops than ISIS has. We've got nuclear weapons. We've got drones. We've got intel. We've got the CIA all around the Middle East. We've got all of these assets here, and yet somehow, magically, we can't do anything about a few thousand jihadists who overran the Iraqi cities, even though they were opposed 10-1 by Iraqi soldiers, that we ourselves trained, armed, and funded. We gave them armored Humvees. We gave them mine-resistant vehicles. We gave them tanks. We gave them helicopters. We gave them small arms. We gave them anti-missile systems. We gave them everything that we could possibly do to try to stabilize the country. And it didn't work. And the reason it's not working is because the weapons that ISIS are using, and some of the fighters within ISIS, come from the FSA. They come from the Free Syrian Army and other jihadist groups that we ourselves are also funding and arming. But Obama naively believed, it seems, this is how it seems to me, that they would stay in Syria, fight Assad, and that no violence could possibly spill over the border into Iraq. A state with apparently totally poorly trained troops with dubious loyalty who abandon at a moment's notice because all they want is the money involved. Then we get reports that at least one of these people in ISIS higher up ranks is a former general under Saddam Hussein. And people are saying, well, is this actually an attempt to reinstate the same government Saddam had? Arguably, it would be more stable if that happened, because at least Saddam used to kill al-Qaeda agents and used to beat up on jihadists for a Sunday celebration. But things are going wrong in this country, and no matter how anti-war you are, and I would be among those ranks of saying we shouldn't be getting involved in all of these third world nations. It's a bad idea. We usually make things worse in the long run. We should have learned our lesson from Korea and Vietnam. We did not. We didn't learn our lesson from the Gulf War. We didn't learn our lesson from Iran. So yes, I can stand against war, but if you've got contractors in a country, and they're under attack by jihadists, which supposedly this country's fighting against, wouldn't it make sense to at least give the Air Force the green light to attack those specific militants in that area and airlift these people out? Because the Iraqi military's not going to do it. They're terrified. They abandoned, they ran from the trenches, so to speak, as soon as they saw ISIS 10 miles away. They didn't even need to run. They could have overwhelmed them. It's because they don't care. They do not have the will to fight. It doesn't matter how much training and money and armaments you give an army if they have no reason to fight. They're going to run or lay down their arms and join the other side, or they're just going to say fuck it, I don't care, and they're going to smoke their hash in the trenches. That's exactly what happened here, and Obama's oblivious. And it's sad because Boehner normally says off-the-wall stupid things, and yet he said the smartest thing I've heard from DC in months, which is that Obama's taking a nap. when it comes to Iraq. And it's true. Obama sits back. He came out and gave a speech and said, there will be no troops on the ground under any circumstances, apparently. Even though there are circumstances that could happen there would force us to put our troops on the ground. He said, there will be no troops, but we're looking at other options, so for the next few days I'm going to look at them. It took ISIS less than 72 hours to overrun 2 of the largest cities in Iraq and consolidate twice as much territory as it previously held, in a sort of blitzkrieg Zerg rush. Which didn't, by the way, even really involve a Zerg rush because they were outnumbered, and yet they won. And yet they captured all of these people. Their ranks are swelling. They've got 100 times more money than they started with. They've now got American equipment, some of our best equipment that we gave to the Iraqi military, ostensibly to fight off the Iranians if necessary. Now, Iran is actually sending soldiers into Iraq. They're helping fight ISIS. They're saying, get away from our borders. If you come near them, we'll bomb you. Why is it that Iran, which supposedly is the great Satan, the great adversary of the Western world, the most woeful, horrible nation that ever existed, if you listen to our government and our media, why are the Iranians, of all people, helping the Iraqis right now to fight off jihadists, and we are doing nothing? We're not even taking the step of taking our own troops out of the country, our own contractors, people on these bases that are in danger right now. We're not even lifting them out. We're relying on the Iraqi military to do it. Relying on the Iraqi military no longer makes sense after we look at what happened at Mosul. It no longer makes any sense. They simply abandoned. They appear to be putting up a fight in Baghdad. Well, that's great. The problem is the city's still falling apart. There were reports of small arms fire and explosions, and there are snipers apparently in the city taking pot shots at Iraqi troops. And it's only a matter of time before people start fleeing Baghdad as well, leaving it a ghost town, leaving it filled with jihadists and soldiers fighting and burning things down and blowing things up. That's exactly what's likely to happen in Baghdad. And this base isn't far from the city. And it's surrounded by ISIS. And the Air Force can't even lift out the few hundred people that are supposedly there. It's sad because Obama ran on the anti-war platform, which everyone could agree with at the time. We were tired of seeing Bush screw up constantly, time and time again, because he was mentally deranged. We got tired of it because Bush was an idiot. But now Obama has proven himself to be an even greater idiot. Because in his naive, loopy, strange, bizarre conception of the world, these people will stay within national borders that they themselves do not recognize. The states of Syria and Iraq and all of these other nations around this region have arbitrary borders. They were carved out by the British after the World Wars period. They were carved out of multiple tribes, multiple religious groups, multiple racial groups, into territories that did not make sense. And they simply did this because they simply drew the borders based on the own mandatory areas that they themselves had created. But the problem is, these areas are full of Kurds, and Shiites, and Sunnis, and Alawites, and all of these other groups and little tribes. There are Christians, there are Muslims, there are Zoroastrians in the region still, a handful, probably a dozen of them or so, but they're still there. There are all of these little groups in Iraq and Syria and so forth, and ISIS realizes that these borders are arbitrary. You see, their idea is to create an Islamic state that encompasses about half of Iraq and half of Syria, a tribal region, as it was in ancient times. They're nationalists. These are essentially, when you really think about it, neo-pagan nationalists that just happen to practice Islam. The borders that they're planning to draw are based on these ancient pagan states that don't exist anymore. The Kurds want to do the same thing. They want their own homeland. They want areas a little bit further north that encompass these various areas that they already inhabit, including part of Turkey, which it's not clear they'll ever actually obtain. But you've even got the Kurds. Here's how screwy the situation is, though. You've got now the Turkish military and the Kurds and the Iranians potentially fighting side by side against ISIS. Meanwhile, the United States is arming jihadists. It's like topsy-turvy. We used to fight these jihadists. Now we're arming them. We used to fight the Iraqis, and now we're sort of backing their weird Shiite government, but we also hate Shia Iran, and we're allied with the Turks, and we're kind of ambivalent towards the Kurds, but now they're partnered together to fight ISIS. And ISIS is sort of Al-Qaeda 2.0, or so the media states, even though it's really just Al-Qaeda. And we're refusing to even fight them, even though they're overwhelming a country we dumped trillions of dollars into. It makes no sense. The entire foreign policy doesn't make sense. Under Bush, it was clear. Kill the jihadists. Kill anything that shoots at you. We're going to take the oil. Ha ha ha. I'm a warmonger. That's what pissed people off. But at least Bush, for all of his stupidity, it was clear what he wanted. He was a warmonger, a chicken hawk. He wanted the oil. It was clear, and he wanted control of these pipelines. But then Obama gets involved and says, well, it's going to be different now. Yeah, it is a lot different. It's a lot more crazy. Nobody's even really sure whose side that we're on anymore. Nobody's sure. It's gotten to the point now where being anti-jihad is almost, labeling, there was a story, Syrian girl, who's a popular YouTuber over in Australia. She's from Syria, she's anti-jihadist and so forth. She's now getting labeled as somebody who's using hate speech for standing against jihad, for standing against people like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. She is now guilty of hate speech against Islam. It doesn't make any sense. We're now beginning to ridicule people who actually stand against Islam. That's funny. We were over there for years fighting these people and saying how bad jihad was, and every night on the news it was these Americans died, these terrorist attacks happened or were thwarted. They bombed Madrid, the train stations. They bombed World Trade Center, bombed this, bombed that. They bombed this market in Baghdad. They bombed this market in Damascus. They're trying to take over this area. We just killed however many hundreds of soldiers, and they had chemical weapons, and here's a vial of botulism they were carrying around, and here's an intercept that shows that they were trying to assassinate Joe Schmo the politician, and now all of a sudden we are the ones arming these people, giving them weapons and money, and it simply doesn't make sense. Our foreign policy looks like it has been cobbled together by disparate groups of people. It looks like the CIA and the Army and the Marines and the Obama White House each developed their own policy and then tried to glue them together and implement them. That's honestly what it looks like. The problem is it's not going to work. What we need to do is send in some planes, bomb the shit out of ISIS. It would take about an hour to bomb the militants that are around this base. It wouldn't be that difficult. Airlift the troops out and then say, fuck it. Let Iraq fall apart. Let it become a failed state, because it's clear we can't build it back up, and it's clear that nobody in Washington, D.C. is willing to enter another war. I would agree with that, by the way. I don't think we should. But we need to at least protect the people that we've got over there and not look like complete assholes on the world stage. Russia's now flying strategic nuclear-capable bombers 50 miles from California. Why do you think they're doing that? It's because they know nobody over here will complain. Did Obama say so much as a word? Did the White House issue a statement like they would have done back in the 50s and 60s? Did they warn Russia about the dangers of sending nuclear-capable long-range bombers right off the American coast? They did nothing, and they will continue doing nothing, because Obama's foreign policy is so strange and so arbitrary and so poorly cobbled together that we're making enemies out of friends, worse enemies out of enemies. Nobody knows really what we're doing, and it looks like we're running like a chicken with its head cut off. That's honestly what I think it looks like to the rest of the world. It would be different if we had someone with actual leadership experience in the White House, but we don't. And the military heads, even though they could function autonomously and just sort of ignore Obama and take the hits as they come and airlift these people out, aren't willing to do that because Obama's shown a proclivity towards kicking out generals and other staff that don't happen to agree with his own modus operandi or so forth. Obama's just crazy. He's stupid. I hate to say it. Somebody that I voted for is a retard. But that's what it appears that Obama is. It's really sad, because we should be doing better than this. At the very least, we can get all of our own citizens out of this godforsaken hellhole of a desert over there in former Samaria and let them collapse. Let ISIS take over. They're going to create a failed state anyway. It's not like these jihadists have the capability of leadership. Let them form this failed state. Let the Iranians bomb them. Let the Turks bomb them and take back the land. Let the Iraqi government stand out. Let Assad bomb them. It doesn't matter. These are jihadists. These are supposedly the people we're fighting against. Now it looks like we're actually on their side and letting them do what they want. So let them do what they want. See how long they live. If Iran completes the bomb and then decides to bomb them with a nuclear warhead, we shouldn't complain. Because it's our own foreign policy under two administrations that has fundamentally failed. That's about all. Peace out.